Right Balance podcast. I'm Diane Wright, your host. Here is where I'd like to share stories and interviews with leading practitioners and coaches, all under the health and wellness umbrella. We'll be including holistic therapies, inspirational people, and a vast array of experts to help you get on the right path. Join me every week for advice and information that will offer help and support, because we all need the right balance in life. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Right Balance podcast. I've got a beautiful soul. I'm going to describe her like that. Heather Conroy is here today. And today we're talking about everything shamanism. This might be brand new to a lot of people. I dipped my toe in a few years ago, but not to the extent that I want Heather to tell us all about it, because the journey that Heather's been on is truly magical, transformative, and quite interesting, to say the least. There's been a huge journey there. So welcome, Heather. Lovely to have you here.
And lovely to be here.
Oh, that's lovely. So I'm going to jump straight back in, and I want you to tell the listeners in a few sentences, what is shamanism?
Shamanism is a way of living. It's working with love and respect for all the elements that are on earth. Sometimes when we think about loving people, we eliminate a vast amount of everything that is around us that we survive on. And so it's very much about working with the elements, and the elements being the fire, the earth, the water, and the air. And that's the first thing that happened to me when I started to learn about shamanism, and the fact that goes back thousands and thousands of years to people working in tribes, living together in tribes. And at that time, they obviously didn't have kettles or somebody providing meals for them. It was very much an existence and how they existed. And it was very much when you learn about the tribes that exist now, they still have the same basics that they move from. And for me, it is going back to the four elements and the way that we treat them, the way that we respect them, and care for them.
Wow, yeah. This is going back to some training that I did a few years ago in Ayurvedic, and it's very, very similar. But yours is a lot more spiritual, I think. And this is what I would like you to tell the listeners. Just going back to your backstory, how did you get into it, and how did it start to develop for you?
Well, over 20 odd years ago, I did a course down in Malvern on channeling. Didn't have a clue what I was going to. It was a recommendation from somebody who I knew very well, and went down there and trusted. And from that channeling, I learned to work with spirit energies, and it did have a profound effect on how I looked at life at that point in time. And I say at that point in time because I was going through quite a traumatic part of my life. And through it, I met a lady called Tanya. And I lost contact with her until after my husband died. And suddenly, from out of the blue, this message came from Tanya saying, "Can we meet up again? I'm coming up to the Lake District with my sister." And when we met again, it was like we'd never been apart. And she had started to do the shamanic training. I didn't understand it. There we are, honesty. I didn't understand anything about it. In some respect, I think I used to take a step back when you hear the word shamanism. And she said, I'm doing my training up in Anamkara, which is a retreat up in Inverness. and they do an introduction course to shamanism. And it would be good for you to go on. And so I listened, and I decided, well, it's not going to hurt me. And I traveled up and spent a week there. And at the end of that weekend, I knew that this was the way forward for me. And I said to the leader, the teacher, who was called Two Birds, and I said, but I'm so old, I don't think I can do this. And she says, age does not matter. It's what you give from your heart. And so I put my name down for the shamanic 2-year practitioner's course. Very wary about it still, but then excited. A month later, I got word that I had got on the course.
Wow.
And so I started in November 2019 and became part of what we call a clan. So it's a group of people who start to do their training together. And we decided on a name, and ours is Clan of the Healing Stones. Obviously, because it's happening in Scotland, the group is called a clan, and they each choose their own name. And then I was working in pairs with somebody, and I was given a name. And my name is Grandmother of the Snow-Capped Mountains. And it was a bit, grandmother, age, I say no more. And her name was Lotus Flower.
Wow.
So that name has been shortened now somewhat, grandmother of the Sloth. So they shortened it to K2, which obviously is a beautiful mountain. But seeing as I don't climb mountains, I love to look at them. It was a bit bewildering to wonder why I'd got that name. And when you think about grandmother is sort of the spiritual support, bringing human warmth. Snow is about change and purification and new beginnings and peace, knowledge. And mountains is about eternity. So the change that was taking was for eternity, for the rest of my life. So when you think about what it actually means, it was a complete change to the part of my life.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So that's how I began.
Wow. So just going back to that initial meeting with your friend and not knowing anything about it, can you remember and go back to that time where literally it was a turning point, or what was the turning point? What made you think, yeah, this is for me?
I think it was the change in her and how it had affected her and the peace that she was feeling within herself.
Okay.
And she is obviously now learning to be a teacher.
Wow.
Of shamanism. So her whole persona, I'll use the word persona.
Yeah.
Was geared up to how she looked at life in a different way.
Yeah. It's a real transformation for people, isn't it? This is what I'm picking up from listening to you, Heather. It's a real sort of maybe going into that black tunnel and not seeing the light. I don't like using that word, but not seeing the end of the tunnel, and thinking there's always going to be darkness. Whereas when you turn your life around, there's huge differences in every aspect, and everything around you as well.
I'm not sure about the darkness. I think that a lot of people do have goals and see what they want, but it's limiting.
Yeah, that's the word. That's better. Yeah. That's better. And how can people use shamanism in their everyday life, say? That's a huge question.
I use it every day of my life. People do meditations to become one within themselves. Sometimes they do meditations before they're doing big journeys, big changes in their life. We call it journeying.
Okay.
And so it's a slightly different way of meditation. So sometimes, I don't say I do it every day, but it is part of my life that I do the journeying. And the journeying is not on my own. My journey is working with what I call my spirit guides.
Okay.
And my power animals, who can come in and support me if I ask for help.
Okay, so somebody who doesn't know about spirit guides, just taking it right back to the roots, when do you know that you have a spirit guide, and what is a spirit guide?
Well, when I was up doing my first weekend of the training, I did some journeying and asked for a spirit guide to come through, not knowing what would happen.
Yeah.
And I was aware of a presence around me, not fearful, just there, very much supportive. And they introduced himself as Malika. And I thought, well, I've never... Doubt started to take place. I'm imagining things here.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I was asked to draw his face. And I am not a painter. I've never been able to draw before. I still struggle with it, but it's very much part of shamanism, is the actual drawing and painting and being creative and working with different.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So I drew his picture, and his picture is there every day for me to look at. So he was my first spirit guide. He's not there for every aspect that I take on, but I know that he's there if I need some help. Later on in my training, I've been working on helping people pass into who are stuck, who have died, and who are stuck and need moving forward. And I have a separate guide for that who came to me. I asked, and this separate guide came to me. But initially, it wasn't necessarily spirit guide that came. It was my power animal that came through.
Wow, talk to me about this more.
Well, my power animal, my beloved power animals. The first was a wolf who brings real strength and focus. As you can imagine, the eyes of a wolf. But they bring with it a lot of love. And actually, about 3 years before this all happened, I had an experience with a wolf down in Coombe with the wolf man. I ended up stroking the tummy of a wolf.
Oh my goodness.
Cheyenne. And they've moved to Cornwall now, and I definitely want to go and see Cheyenne, if Cheyenne is still with us. So my first power animal was wolf, so that's bringing me strength. And then the second power animal that came through was a sloth. And my initial reaction was one of horror. Horror. Everybody else was getting beautiful kingfishers, eagles, all sorts of and I got the sloth. And it became a bit of a standing joke with my friends. So now I am surrounded by a calendar with a sloth on, a teddy bear with a sloth on, a earring with a sloth on. And now I just smile when I see a sloth, because sloths are looking at life with a different perspective.
Yeah.
Remember, they're very slow, but they're very learned, and you learn. There's a lot of teaching to learn from the sloth. So I adore my sloth now. I smile when I see it.
Good for you, Heather. Good for you. And just going back to these animals, and obviously this is in your mind's eye, if you like. So everybody has different. Now, and do they change? Obviously, you've had two animals. How is it? Would people expect different animals to come through at certain events in their life for that meaning?
Yes, your power animal can change as you move through your life. My feeling is that my wolf will be with me throughout. Yeah. It's definitely like a guardian for me. The sloth well, I would be reluctant to lose her. But as I do the learnings, I fully expect that other power animals will come through as I move on. And when I did certain practices, other animals came through to me as I'm doing my shamanic training. But the two principal ones right at this present time are the wolf and the sheep.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's brilliant. How can people sort of, so maybe the wrong word to use this, delve more into shamanism as an interest, or is it an interest? Is it a hobby? How would you describe, or way of life, I suppose, is it?
It's very much for me a way of life. I'm not happy with the word hobby. No, it isn't, because it is definitely a different aspect of learning. There are people who come in and dip in, and I say dip in, they come and see what it's about. I think it does affect them in some way, even if they decide not to go further forward. The fact that you will have learned something from that dip in.
Yeah, that's lovely. And the other often is asked with shamanism, do you need any special equipment? Such?
Well, the first thing I bought was a drum.
Yeah.
My drum, my beloved drum, because drum, they're like tools of the shamanism, and drumming and dancing are very much part of being a shaman, and singing. So, but when I say singing, it can be a very various. It can be joint. It can be on your own. This morning, I stood in the shower and I sang. I had no idea what I sang. It just happened. Now that hasn't happened before, so I think it was very much part of preparing me for this talking to you today. But I also have a rattle, and a rattle can be for clearing. It can be the start of a healing. It can be the end of the healing. Very much a purification. So I have a rattle that somebody made for me in the shape of a sloth.
Fantastic, Heather. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. You use candles, feathers, stones, very much stones, because they're part of the earth. And a lot of people paint the stones. I haven't managed to do that yet. There is a lot of things I've got to do regarding to painting, but they're coming into my life now. So there's an acceptance that that's going to happen more and more. So my son in America said, I'm not stuck for you, Mum, anymore for Christmas and birthdays, because in America, of course, with Native American, there is a lot of shamanic work going on there with the Native Americans. And so every time I get a lovely new present, a lovely new rattle, shawls to wear and things like that. So there is a lot of tools that you can use, yes, if you want to call them tools. They're part of our life.
It's part of, I suppose it's part of this journey and journaling and everything that you're talking about. It's fabulous. It's really interesting. Is there any practices in which may give people, like you went on that little retreat in down south, where people can maybe just dip their toe in just to kind of see, is this for me? Is this not for me?
Well, there is the introduction to shamanism course, and that's a weekend course. I mean, there's lots of books that you can read about shamanism, and sometimes I would think that and they're quite good introduction books to them. There's a lot of books about shamanism. Some are easier to read than others. I chose to actually be practical about it. And the good news is that my friend Tanya is moving up to Carlisle.
Wow.
And hopefully after Christmas. And there is going to be courses running in Cumbria. I'm not saying that there isn't courses already, because there are shamans in Cumbria, but I haven't met them properly yet.
Okay.
But there will be definitely in the next year an introduction to shamanism course going on in Cumbria. It's a lovely way of actually introducing you to the whole way of living.
I think it's really interesting, you know, it just takes one of these sentences that we've been talking about for something to trigger in somebody's mind. Oh, this might just be my way forward. It might just be a new opening for something new. And I think from the previous 18 months plus that we've had of ups and downs, I think people need a new opening. And I think it's coming forward more and more, especially the nature aspect of things. We need to connect to nature more and more, so much more. And the other thing that I wanted to ask you about was the community, the local community, the Heart of the Fire. Can you explain a little bit about that, Heather?
It's Heart of the Wild.
Sorry, Heart of the Wild.
It is a group that's set up, it's hoping to become a charity, and it's been set up by the clans from Anamkara who've done their training and completed. And the idea is that they're going to be setting up in the borders when they get the money and when they get organised, a sort of a retreat further south nearer the borders. And so every equinox they put on an event that you can link into. And if you go onto the internet, Heart of the Wild, it would explain what it is, and you can actually access it via Zoom. And on that, they have prayers, they have stories, they have, they work with the fire, they work with the air. So you see the whole aspect of shamanism.
That's really fabulous.
And it's free.
Which is even better, just going forward with your life now then, Heather. So where are you on your journey, if that's the right word to use, or your learning aspect of shamanism?
Well, I think my learning aspect will be forever. My course finishes in November, but already with my friend coming up to work here, I'm not training to be a teacher.
Okay.
That's not for me. I can be there to support and help others. And my main goal right at this minute is to set up a healing circle within Cumbria.
Oh, lovely.
And that is not one-to-one, but it's having 7 or 8 people working with people, with an individual who will call a child, who will come and ask for healing. And I have had healing twice now, and it is absolutely beautiful. The first was to deal with the grief of my husband passing, and I'd held it in, put on a brave face, traveled the world and things, but the grief was still there. And there was such joy at the end of that healing.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And the second, which is just recent, was about the fear of my age and what was going to happen moving forward, because I didn't see anything moving forward, and that I had stopped laughing to a certain extent.
Oh, Heather.
Yeah, and that's it. Laughter is a great part of my life. So I asked for healing, and so I was part of a healing circle just recently up in Stonehaven, and there was determination that I became an elder. An elder in shamanism is very much like a grandmother.
Yeah.
There was an acceptance of being a grandmother, but they brought in accepting that and being an elder, the laughter came back into my life. And in the middle of the healing, and I can't remember much of it, I started laughing, and all these spirit energies around me were laughing as well. So great joy.
Oh, that's fabulous to hear.
So I moved forward.
Oh, that's fantastic. Heather, it's been an absolute joy to listen about your story, about how you got into it and how it's actually helped and transformed, that's the right word, your life, or is the journey of life, shall we say, going forward. It's really, really interesting. And if people are interested in contacting Heather, I do have full details, including the Facebook and email address, will be at the end on the show notes. Heather, I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you so much for your time, your energy, and your expertise in this journey. I think it's fabulous.
I don't know about expertise.
Oh, definitely.
Student still. I'm still a student and always will be.
I know, but students are only from day one. We then go on to the leading path of life. And I love that. I love it. Yeah. Heather, thank you so much. Wishing you all the very best for the future and hope to catch up with you again. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you very much and love to everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Right Balance podcast. Hope you enjoyed the content. Please tell your friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to the show. It will also be uploaded to the social media channels like Facebook and YouTube, including all the show notes. I hope you'll join me next week. Stay safe.